Willow's betrayal, Drew awakens to expose shocking truth about his wife. General Hospital, spoilers, a shocking revelation shakes, Port Charles. The halls of General Hospital are buzzing with shock and disbelief as one of the most explosive secrets in recent memory finally unravels. After weeks of uncertainty and mounting tension, Drew Kane has regained consciousness. And what he discovered during those terrifying moments of poisoning is about to change everything and everyone in Port Charles. The nightmare begins to unfold. Drew Kane, the congressman and beloved member of the Quartermain family, has been lying in a hospital bed, suspended between life and death, victim of an attack that nobody saw coming. What made this attack particularly shocking was not just its brutality, but the identity of the person responsible, someone he loved, someone he trusted, someone he married. Willow Tate Kane, a nurse at General Hospital and a woman who had only recently been acquitted in the shooting of her husband, had struck again. This time, her weapon was not a gun, but a syringe filled with a deadly substance that sent Drew into an immediate collapse. The poison had ravaged his body, sending his mind into darkness and threatening to take his life entirely. For days, Drew remained unconscious, his condition hovering between critical and stable as medical professionals worked tirelessly to reverse the effects of whatever toxin had been introduced into his bloodstream. The staff at General Hospital found themselves in an impossible situation, treating a man poisoned by one of their own colleagues, a woman who had managed to maintain her position despite her violent history with the patient. The moment of truth arrives. But then against seemingly impossible odds, Drew Kane woke up. As his eyes fluttered open and consciousness slowly returned to him, the memories came flooding back. The poison was not designed to erase his mind entirely. It was designed to incapacitate him, to leave him helpless, to silence him. But it had failed in its ultimate purpose. Through the fog of medication and the trauma of near death, Drew began to piece together the horrifying truth about what had happened to him. He remembered Willow's face, her steady hands, the cold determination in her eyes as she approached him with the syringe. He remembered her voice, eerily calm, as she whispered words that echoed the dark prophecy she had made weeks before when she shot him the first time. "Everything will work out," she had said, just as she had said when she fired bullets into his back. "You'll see." The realization crystallized in his mind with terrible clarity. His wife, the woman he had married, the mother of his daughter's scout, had attempted to murder him. And this time it was not in a moment of desperation or fear, it was calculated, deliberate, executed with the precision of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The confession to Detective Dante. The moment Drew was strong enough to speak, he did not hesitate. Despite his weakened condition, despite the machines connected to his body, despite the doctors advising caution and rest, Drew demanded to see Detective Dante Falconeri. The detective arrived at the hospital quickly, his investigator's instincts already humming with curiosity about the congressman's sudden consciousness. What Dante heard in that hospital room was both shocking and irrefutable. Drew, speaking with difficulty but with absolute certainty, laid out the entire incident. He described Willow's approach, her calm demeanor, the syringe in her hand, and the injection that had sent him into darkness. He identified her beyond any shadow of a doubt as the person responsible for poisoning him. Dante listened carefully, his expression growing darker with each revelation. This was not the first time Willow Tate had attempted to seriously harm or kill another human being. The detective had been through the shooting case, had heard the arguments about her guilt or innocence, had watched as a jury of her peers voted to acquit her despite the circumstantial evidence. But this was different. This was not a crime of passion or desperation committed in a moment of panic. This was attempted murder in the most premeditated sense of the word. Within hours, Dante had obtained a warrant for Willow's arrest. The police came to General Hospital, where Willow had been playing the devoted wife sitting by Drew's bedside, crying crocodile tears, for the benefit of anyone who might be watching. The arrest was sudden, shocking to witness, and completely undeniable. Willow was handcuffed and read her rights as the hospital staff looked on in stunned silence. The shockwave through Port Charles. The news of Willow's arrest for attempted murder spread through Port Charles like wildfire. The revelation that the woman who had been acquitted of shooting her husband had then turned around and attempted to kill him. Again, using her knowledge as a nurse to administer a poison that nearly succeeded was almost incomprehensible to most residents of the... Nina Reeves, Willow's mother, found herself reeling from the news. She had stood by her daughter through the shooting trial, had believed in her innocence, had supported her publicly and privately. The realization that Willow had been planning and executing another attempt on Drew's life the entire time was utterly devastating. How could she have missed the signs? How could she have failed to see the darkness that had taken hold of her daughter's mind? Weight of guilt and shock was almost too much for her to bear. Carly Corinthos likewise found herself struggling to come to terms with the revelation, though her relationship with Willow had been complicated and often contentious. She had not suspected her daughter-in-law of being capable of such calculated violence. The image of Willow calmly injecting poison into Drew's neck, the knowledge of what she had intended to accomplish, struck Carly with the force of a physical blow. It was a betrayal not just of Drew but of everyone in their family. Michael's disbelief. But perhaps the most profound shock belonged to Michael Corinthos. Michael, who had been married to Willow, who had a daughter with her, who had known her as intimately as one person can know another, could barely process the truth. The woman he had once loved, the woman who was the mother of his child, had revealed herself to be a murderer, or at least someone capable of attempting to be one. Michael's disbelief was not born of naivety or willful ignorance. It was the natural response of someone confronted with the undeniable reality that the person they thought they knew was actually someone else entirely. A woman he had shared a life with, a woman he had built a family with, had been concealing a capacity for violence and premeditation that was difficult for him to reconcile with any of his memories or experiences of her. The shock to Michael extended beyond the personal betrayal. If Willow was capable of this, what else had she been hiding? What other dark secrets lurked behind her carefully constructed facade of a devoted wife and concerned mother? The questions were almost unbearable to contemplate. The medical crisis. While the emotional fallout from Willow's arrest continued to ripple through Port Charles, the medical crisis at General Hospital remained critical. Drew was still recovering from the poison that had ravaged his system, still dealing with the immediate physical effects of the injection and the toll it had taken on his body. Lucas Jones and Elizabeth Weber, two of the hospital's most dedicated physicians, worked around the clock to monitor Drew's condition and ensure that he continued to improve. The poison itself, which investigations would later reveal to be a substance carefully chosen by Willow for its ability to incapacitate without necessarily leaving obvious traces, had to be carefully treated and managed to prevent any secondary effects or complications. What had started as a routine diagnosis of stroke-like symptoms had evolved into something far more sinister, the deliberate attempt by a medical professional to use her knowledge to cause serious harm to another person. It was a violation of every principle of medical ethics, a betrayal of the trust that society places in healthcare workers. The machinery of justice. With Willow in custody and Drew recovering in his hospital bed, the machinery of the justice system began to move. District Attorney Justine Turner now had the opportunity to build a case against Willow for attempted murder, a charge far more serious than the shooting for which she had been acquitted. This time the evidence was not circumstantial. This time there was a victim who could testify directly about what he had experienced and witnessed. This time there were witnesses who had seen Willow inject the poison, including medical staff at the hospital who could corroborate Drew's account. The case seemed significantly stronger than the previous trial, and those familiar with the legal system recognized that Willow's prospects had changed dramatically. The unfolding story. As the days passed and the investigation continued, more details emerged about Willow's state of mind and her motivations. It became clear that this was not an impulsive act, not a moment of temporary insanity, but a carefully planned and executed attempt to neutralize the threat that Drew represented to her. Willow had feared that Drew was beginning to recover memories, beginning to piece together the truth about her actions, beginning to pose a threat to her custody arrangement with their daughter, Scout. In her mind, the only solution was to act before he could speak, to silence him in a way that would leave her free to continue with her life. The revelation sent shockwaves through everyone who had supported Willow during the shooting trial. Those who had believed in her innocence found themselves questioning their judgment, wondering what they had missed, wondering what kind of person they had really been defending. A community reckoning. For Port Charles as a community, the incident forced a reckoning. A member of the medical profession, someone who had been entrusted with the care of human life, had used that position of trust to attempt to commit murder. It was a violation on multiple levels, personal, professional, and moral. The residents of Port Charles found themselves asking difficult questions about trust, about judgment, about the nature of evil, and whether it could hide behind even the most convincing facades. Willow Tate's actions had shattered assumptions about who she was, and forced everyone around her to reevaluate their understanding of her character. The road ahead. As Drew continued his recovery, and Willow remained in police custody, the road ahead promised to be long and complicated. There would be investigations into Willow's actions, into how she had managed to carry out her plan, into what might have been done differently to prevent the attack. There would be legal proceedings, trials, and the entire machinery of justice grinding forward to determine appropriate consequences for her actions. There would be custody hearings and discussions about Scout's future, about who should have primary responsibility for raising a child whose mother had revealed herself to be capable of attempted murder. And through it all, there would be the personal reckoning of everyone who had loved Willow, believed in her, supported her, or trusted her. The realization that someone they thought they knew had been concealing such darkness would leave marks that might never fully heal. The story of Willow Tate and Drew Kane is, at its heart, a tragedy. It is a story of betrayal of violence, of a woman who allowed her actions and her fears to drive her toward increasingly desperate and dark acts. It is a story of a community shaken by the revelation of hidden darkness, of the fragility of trust, and of the consequences that come when that trust is broken so completely and so deliberately as Port Charles' real